First of all, how's your campaign? How's everything going?
We're gonna win in 6 days. We're working. It's all about a ground game, getting out the vote, talking to voters every
Mhm.
single day from morning till night, connecting with them where they are. And there's a real sense that there's a lot at stake. They know the work that we've done on behalf of the constituents in the fourth district in particular. And I don't take any vote for granted, and I'm asking for support. So if you haven't voted yet, please vote Steven Horsford for Congress. You can go to my website at stephenhorsford.com. And if you want to volunteer to make sure that we turn out this vote and win big, we welcome you into our campaign to do that.
So, Congressman, obviously, I want to talk to you about a lot of the issues and a lot of the problems facing this nation and this state. But before I get to that, what do you make of the fact that your opponent holds a press conference a couple days ago, just making it personal, talking about your wife? Your wife made some statements on Twitter, and I don't know even if you want to address that at all. But he holds a press conference for maybe 10 minutes or so, just talking about your personal life, your wife. He doesn't talk about policy. He doesn't talk about criticisms in regards to your policy. And my criticism towards him is he's the same guy who supported Donald Trump. You've been very open and honest about maybe some marriage issues you've had in your life, but this is the man who supported Donald Trump. He never held press conferences about any of his sexual innuendos or whatever, but yet he holds a press conference about you. What did you make of that?
Well, Sam Peters has gone through a divorce proceeding himself. Um, Marriages are tough. Relationships are tough. And they're especially tough on those of us who serve and have served in public life. I love Sonia. She has blessed me with 22 years of great memories. Uh, we've been blessed with 3 phenomenal, gifted children. And I will never disparage nor tear down the person who I have built a life with for more than 20 years. She's hurt, and I've caused some of that hurt. But for my opponent to use what is a very personal matter um, to create a political whatever is despicable. It says a lot about who he is. And it's why I'm going to kick his ass in 6 days.
I hear you. One more question about this, and then I want to move on to what I consider to be much more important things. Um, your wife put out a tweet. She used the term you were violent towards her. Can you respond to that? Because that's a serious accusation. And I know you said that, listen, she's hurt. And I think that's understandable. We're all hurt when we get into situations where we break up with people. Can you respond to anything that she said? Is there any truth to that? The money situation that she said that your attorneys said to her, and the fact that she used the term violent and bullied. Is there anything you can say to respond to that?
What I'm just going to say is that we are working through a process in an amicable way to reach agreement. There is each of us have a choice about what we agree to. Neither one of us is involved in forcing the other to do something they don't want to do. There's a lot of charged words because they're charged emotions.
Sure.
But again, I have nothing but the most respect for Sonia. I apologize to her, to my children,
Yes.
and to my family. And I will spend the rest of my life working to restore the relationships that I have contributed to harming in one way or another.
Understood. I think that's well said. Do you find it interesting that a lot of the Republicans out there that seem to want to go after you personally for having a relationship outside of your marriage are the same people that stood behind Donald Trump with the infidelities there, kids with 3 different wives, 25 women accusing him of sexual assault or rape? Sam Peters, your opponent, has stood by Donald Trump for years now. I never saw him hold a press conference talking about Donald Trump. Do you find that interesting? And do you find it, the definition of what I would call hypocrisy?
Well, they're straight up hypocrites. They're hypocrites in a lot of different ways. But look, I will talk about a lot of things.
Yeah.
My family, the circumstances under which we are working towards resolution is something that it is private.
Yes.
I am focused on doing that amicably, um, and Sam Peters or no other Republican has a right to intervene. Sonia asked early into this process to be respected and to have privacy, and they won't even give her that. They don't care about families. If they did, they'd shut up and keep my family's mouth, my family out of their mouth.
Agree.
The point of the matter is they've spent more time focusing on my family than the families who are struggling with high cost rent, families who are struggling to get back on their feet, families that are worried about, how they're going to afford to pay next month's rent. Let's talk about the
Yes.
Nevada family, the Nevada issues that are affecting families every single day. And if Sam Peters wants to meet me in the back to talk about my family, we'll have that conversation as well.
Understood. All right, let's talk about the issues facing this state and this country, quite frankly. I want to play you a bit of audio from the last debate that you had with Sam Peters, and it had to do with student loans, which obviously you support, as do I. And then you bring up a very interesting point in this debate about how he took a loan during COVID, and we talked a little bit about hypocrisy. Have a listen to this. So basically, you're talking about the loan that he got during COVID. He had no problem, getting that loan forgiven. And then you're talking about student loans, which he's against. Talk about that.
Well, not only is he against it, he called the American Rescue Plan socialism. So the bill that we passed to give relief to small businesses, including his, providing support here in Nevada, more than 150,000 businesses got a PPP loan, a restaurant revitalization loan, an EIDL loan, or a shuttered venue grant loan in order to keep their businesses open, to keep people employed. He received one of those for $72,000. Fortunately, he used it to retain employees. And he took the provision that allowed him to forgive that loan. He also received $10,000 from the state of Nevada, funded by the American Rescue Plan, that he called socialism. So is it socialism when it's for everybody else, but it's aid for your small business when it's for you? It's just you're a hypocrite. Bottom line. And the president made the decision about the student loan cancellation. That was something that was done by executive action. There are a lot of other things that we should be doing in Congress to make colleges more affordable so people don't have to go into debt. I have laid out several plans for legislation that I'm advancing to do just that. But the president had the authority to do what he did. And when you have these big businesses, I mean, Sam Peters owned a small business. We had big businesses that took out hundreds of millions of dollars of loans and got it forgiven. And then they're saying it's because of these kids who are first generation, second generation college students who work their way through school, who are trying to get just a little bit of education to get ahead, that they're the problem with our federal budget because we gave them a $10,000 or $20,000 loan forgiveness program. Now, yeah, there are different ways that we could tailor it.
Right.
But the hypocrisy of my opponent and others like him, again, he called it socialism. It's not socialism. It's helping people, from businesses to workers to students,
Right.
to people staying in their homes. It's what we had to do in the middle of the worst global pandemic in history that disproportionately affected Nevada. And I will stand by my vote because my job is to deliver for my constituents, and I
and I
did that.
and I am 100% with you for that. And it seems like those that are against the forgiveness for student loans are the ones that are wealthy and well off themselves. At least it appears that way to me. Another moment in the debate that I think is very, very important, Congressman, is Sam Peters. I mean, I've called him an election denier. Same thing with Adam Laxalt and Jim Marchant and Sigal Chattah. I think these people are crazy and they don't live in reality. But I want to play you this moment in the debate you had. I think it's very telling because he will not answer the question, is Joe Biden a free and fair elected president? Here it is. He says he's the president of the United States, but if you notice, he won't answer the question. He's the free and fair elected president of the United States. How do you deal with people like that?
How do you deal with them? How are
It's not easy.
voters dealing with them? Voters are fed up with anyone, whether someone who's run for office, especially, or those who are running to actually oversee laws or election processes, like Jim Marchant, a very dangerous person who's trying to oversee Nevada elections, and he still won't even indicate where he was wrong in 2020. My opponent was part of the rhetoric that led to the insurrection on January 6th. I was at the U.S. Capitol when we were attacked. It wasn't just an attack on a U.S. Capitol building. It was an attack on our very democracy. Capitol police officers were beaten, bludgeoned. Windows of the Capitol were beaten and smashed. Feces throughout the Capitol building, and a number of other things that were just horrific. And then after that happened, more than 150 Republicans came back to the floor and still did not honor the will of the people. They still challenged the vote. And Nevada, we were one of 5 states that were being challenged. Arizona and Pennsylvania and a few others. And so I was in my office preparing to defend the Nevada electors and our process when we were told to evacuate and to take cover. So Sam Peters, and others contributed to that. He's a part of the Marjorie Taylor Greene faction who has incited this along with Donald Trump. They don't deserve to be in office, let alone to protect all of us for having free and fair elections in our country.
Congressman, what do you make of this? I mean, the Adam Laxalts of the world, the Jim Marchants, and those throughout the country, Republicans that say if they lose, they won't accept the outcome of the election. Now, I know you want to win. I believe you will win. But I would imagine if you lose, you will accept the outcome of an election. There are people running for office here that have already said if they lose, they won't accept it. But if they win, everything's just fine. These are really weird times we're living in. What do you make of this?
Well, I lost an election in 2014 by
accepted.
just over 3,000 votes, and I conceded to my opponent at that time, Crescent Hardy. I didn't like losing, but I knew that we didn't do the job we needed to win.
Mm-hmm.
And after all the vote came in and all the analysis was done, I came up short and my opponent won. And I conceded and I moved on.
Right.
And that is how our democracy is supposed to work. Right now, we are in a different situation. But look, the power isn't with all these people. And I tend not to spend too much of my time talking about them because I'll lose it. I spend time talking to the people who can make the difference. And the people who can make the difference are those who are sitting at home saying, should I really vote? I know I got this mail ballot that was sent to me the other day, but I haven't opened it. I don't know all of the people that are on the ballot, so I'm really not interested. Or what's the difference? The parties are pretty much the same. I'm tired of all these negative ads, so I'm just going to zone out. I'm more focused on reaching them, whether it's by going door to door, whether it's calling them, whether it's texting them, because they matter. They're the ones who are ultimately going to turn out and determine these elections, particularly some of these statewide races that are very close. And I don't take my vote or my election for granted. And that's why I'm spending
Sure.
an inordinate amount of time reaching the people that I know I have to reach in order to win my race.
So, Congressman, you're a very passionate person, and I've seen you speak in regards to gun control. Your father sadly lost his life to gun violence. I've seen you speak passionately about this issue. As you know, October 1, the biggest mass shooting in the history of this country. Many Republicans don't seem to have many solutions other than harden our schools and more guns. What I try to say on the air every day is the reason why we have more of this problem than pretty much anywhere else in the world is because we have more guns than people in this country. Can you speak to that and your passion for gun control and how difficult it has been for you to get Republicans to agree with you on this issue?
Well, first, I want to start with what we were able to do, which was pass a bipartisan Safer Communities Act, the first comprehensive bill in 30 years passed in Congress. That was no easy feat. There were Republicans in the Senate, namely Senator Cornyn, who was a part of a number of meetings that I participated in where we were working on literally the provisions of the bill. So, in brief, the bill provides for enhanced background checks, particularly for young people under 21. It addresses the red flag laws. Nevada is one of the states that's implementing red flag laws, particularly around preventing people who have committed domestic violence or who have mental health issues that are documented from being able to possess a gun. But we don't have all the systems in place. This bill, the Safer Communities Act, helps those states that have passed those laws implement that effectively. It addresses the bump stock issue, which was directly the case of what was used in the 1 October shootings. But beyond all of the gun provisions, it invests $2 billion into anti-violence programming and funding and investments that we know can actually curb gun-related violence, including my bill to break the cycle of violence. So we did a number of things: put more resources in schools for psychologists and counselors, more money for after-school programs under 21st Century so that we can keep kids, particularly high school students, in positive environments. My bill to break the cycle of violence, in that portion, we got $250 million, which is just a down payment. But that goes to community-based nonprofits and faith-based organizations, some of whom are doing the work. Pastor Troy Martinez right here in our community runs the Dads in Our Schools program. These dads are volunteering right now to keep our kids safe. They're not paid to do that. Right. We have the Safe Villages program that Pastor Cherry and others have run. Anytime there's a gang-related shooting, they're the ones who respond, sometimes before the police even respond. They're not funded to do that work. Under my bill, they are now funded. And we actually bring some of the people who have been previously affected by gun violence, some of whom actually committed gun violence, into the process because they know how best to stem it. My job is not to pass policy to keep the issue going.
Right.
When I talk about breaking the cycle of violence, I'm talking about disrupting it, ending it, stopping violence before it occurs.
Yeah.
And there are evidence-based practices that have worked that we don't fund.
Agreed.
And now, because of my bill and what we were able to do with the bipartisan Safer Communities Act, we will begin to start. It won't solve all the problems,
Right,
but it's better than doing nothing.
I
While
agree.
100 people a day die,
Yep.
due to no fault of their own, and senseless gun violence, and more than 200 people are injured at the hands of gun violence that could be prevented.
I applaud you for doing that. I really do. What would you say to people out there like the Segal Chattas of the world after the Uvalde shooting who said, oh, this is just a rare occurrence? People like Ted Cruz who say kindergarten teachers should be armed with weapons. Many of these Republicans do not want an assault weapons ban when we know, as you know, that when the assault weapons ban was put in place by Democrats, gun violence went down. And then when Republicans allowed it to just expire, went back up again. What would you say to these people out there that you have to work with? What would you say to them when they say, no, don't want an assault weapons ban? 18 years old, you should be allowed to buy as many AR-15s as you want with as much ammunition as you want. How do you deal with these people? I guess that's what I'm trying to ask you. And how do you work with them?
Number one, I believe in the Second Amendment, and there's both the balancing of the rights under the Second Amendment and the balancing of the rights of everyone else to stay alive. And
Yep.
we can achieve both.
Mhm.
It's a false choice to say that we can't.
Mhm.
I represent a very big district, a lot of rural areas, people who have a gun for safety of their home. It's their lifestyle, way of life. I'm not trying to come take away people's guns. What I'm trying to do is prevent those 100 deaths a day
Right.
due to gun violence that can be prevented, and the more than 200 who are injured at the hand of a gun
Yep.
that we can prevent.
Sure.
We have to be able to do something. Again,
Agree.
if some of these people on the other side don't get it, get out of my way
Yep.
and allow me to work with the people that I can.
Yep.
We got a bill through with Republican votes in the House and the Senate because we worked with those of us who want to find solutions. Some of these people, Marjorie Taylor Greene's, the Freedom Caucus,
Right.
they don't want to find solutions.
Right.
They want the problem to continue. They want to use this to just grow more likes on Twitter and more, hits on social. I'm not in office for
You
that.
want to save lives.
I'm in it to
Yep.
actually pass legislation to
And,
save
and nobody
lives.
better for you. And I'm so sorry what happened to your father, but sadly, what it's like to lose a loved one to gun violence. And sadly, I would say I want people like you know what it's like, sadly, to go through a horrible experience like that. And you don't want that to happen to anybody else. All right. Michelle Mortensen is my co-host today. Michelle wanted to ask you a few questions in regards to policy. Michelle, take it away.
Yeah, let's talk about inflation. That's like not my favorite thing to talk about because I love inflation, but inflation's a really big deal right now. And a CBS poll taken in the middle of October found that 76% of Nevadans say they're feeling a real hardship right now when it comes to prices. Nevada, as of today, according to AAA, has the third highest gas prices in the nation. I know that you voted and supported the the Inflation Reduction Act. And depending on whom you listen to, a Wharton School of Business, the CBO office, they claim that it's not going to bring any relief for inflation here in the short term. What would you say to that? Do you say that those analyses from places like the CBO are incorrect? And if they are, could you explain how they're incorrect?
Well, first, I get what people are feeling because I grew up here, raised by a single mom. I know what it's like to struggle and not have enough money to meet all of your needs, to come up short at the end of the month and worry about the rent and food and gas and childcare. And unfortunately, some of these things are, higher. And on top of that, people's wages are not keeping up with it. So first is, I get it. There are a number of factors that are contributing to inflation as a whole. I tend to like to break down specific areas like housing and rent, which in my district has gone up almost 30% since 2019.
We have the second highest rents in the nation here in
Right.
Nevada.
And so why is that? That is for two reasons. Number one, we have a bunch of out-of-state corporate speculators who are buying up a bunch of property in cash, pricing out people from veterans from using their VA, first-time home buyers who saved up a little bit of money, people who are trying to move up into a little larger home. They priced all them out. Even the ones who buy and then offer them for rent are gouging the renters, evicting them at higher rates, and not even providing maintenance on the property, which lowers the property value in the entire community. That's not something that has been done because of any specific economic proposal by the current administration. It's because of corporate greed and speculators. That's why I've introduced a bill called the Home Act to go after these out-of-state corporate speculators. Now, where we have been able to reduce cost for families, we have. The prescription drug bill, which does reduce cost. It caps out-of-pocket costs for seniors at $2,000. That's my provision. On average, seniors on Medicare were paying something around $5,100 a year. My bill caps it at $2,000. That's $3,000 more that people now have to spend somewhere else, not paying for drugs. Also, capping insulin at $35 is huge. The provision around the Affordable Care Act and the premium credits, those premium credits save on average 20,000 Nevada families $2,300 a year that they would otherwise have to come out of their pocket. They don't have it, so we're providing that tax credit for them in order to get that health care, because the last thing we need is for people to lose their health care. And then finally, under the Inflation Reduction Act, we make the largest investment in climate to address things like the drought, to address things like new renewable energy for solar, which creates jobs, which does reduce the cost of energy. Now, that's one bill. The Chips and Science bill and the infrastructure bill also had provisions in it to reduce contributing factors to it for inflation. For example, in the infrastructure bill, we had issues at the port where small businesses couldn't get their product because they were only operating one shift a day before we passed the infrastructure bill. Now that bipartisan bill's passed, the ports out of California operate 24/7. What's contributing to the delay now? We don't have enough truckers to take the product off of the boats to get them disseminated to the end users who need it across the country. That's why I'm focused on an investment in workforce development to help train another generation of truckers through apprenticeship. And then the Chips and Science Act, we're talking about semiconductors that are in everything from our computers to our phones to medical devices, pretty much everything that we use. We were over reliant on Taiwan and other places for those components, which drives up the cost for those items for the things that we need to buy here. So under our legislation now, we're manufacturing those things here in America. Is it happening overnight? No. But these are the actions that we've taken. And my question to my opponent and other people is, what's your plan? How are you going to fix the inflation?
Yeah.
How are you going to drive down the cost for housing and for childcare and for food? You can point out it's a problem, or you can actually propose a solution. The only solution that they proposed is to make the Trump tax cuts permanent. And how are they going to do that? By gutting Medicare and Social Security, which actually are trust funds. You can't even touch them, but they are so hell-bent on taking away those benefits from people who need them. That's one of their plans that they have said in their own agenda that they're going to do if they are successful in taking over the majority.
Michelle, before you get to your next question, what he is speaking of, I want to play another clip real quickly of his debate with Sam Peters, because you talk about where's your solution and hypocrisy. This is a moment in the debate where Sam Peters brings up the baby formula issue. Just have a listen to this moment. Yeah, when you talk about his family, he doesn't like that, but he has no problem talking about your family. It's an important part in the debate, in my personal opinion, because he's complaining about the baby formula shortage. Correct me if I'm wrong, Congressman, but Democrats came up with a solution, and all the Republicans vote against it, but he doesn't want to talk about that.
They voted against the baby formula solution. Not one Republican voted for the baby formula solution when there was this shortage. Not one voted to hold big oil accountable when they were gouging consumers, as they continuing to do. They have record profits. Yes, there are other contributing factors, but when one company makes the most they've ever made in the last 2 quarters and our gas prices are still going up, you can't tell me they're not part of the problem. That not one of them voted to hold big pharma accountable to reduce prescription drugs. Not one of them voted to make sure that we provided relief to small businesses through the American Rescue Plan. But Sam Peters, took the dough and would vote no, and he's fine with him getting a loan forgiveness for his loan, but believes that students getting a student loan forgiveness are the problem with our federal budget. It's just that type of hypocrisy. And look, my bottom line is I'm not here to argue with my opponent. The voters are going to decide in 6 days who wins. Then we have to govern. And what I know in governing, both in my days here in the state Senate and in Congress, you have to be able to build alliances. You have to be able to work with people on the other side of the aisle. I'm a member of the Problem Solvers Caucus. It's half Republican, half Democrats. We're moderates. We're not the extremes. We don't get a lot of attention, but we work every week to find solutions to problems. Right now, the telehealth bill that just got passed is one of the priorities that we all work together on. We had a bill on mental health to better address the opioid crisis. Like, there are things that we're doing every day that we don't get attention for, but that's what it takes to actually get things done. And I challenged my opponent a couple times as well. It's like, you can stand here and use national talking points from the party that they gave you, or you can actually know what it takes to get things done.
Right.
It's not easy. It's a hard job.
Mm-hmm.
And particularly because of all the rank and rhetoric and just divisiveness, it's even harder, and it's increasingly becoming more dangerous to serve. Beyond the sacrifice that it causes to you and your family, it's a threat now because of the rhetoric. You have to check the locations of where you're going before you show up. You got to make sure that, you know, people that you're meeting with aren't there to somehow attack or put you in a compromising situation. We saw what happened with Paul Pelosi.
That's what I wanted to ask you as a congressman. What goes through your mind when you heard about what happened to Paul Pelosi?
I mean, first, your heart just aches with pain. You know, it's so sad that this is where things have come. And I did not post. I wasn't the first person out to say this is this group doing it. And I wanted to know what the facts were.
Right.
But now it's pretty obvious this person is a part of the QAnon, website. He believes all the stuff that he's been reading. He believes that Pelosi is the reason for all of his problems. And now he went and attacked an 82-year-old man. That man is, he's a husband. He's a father. He's a grandfather. I know his grandkids. They don't need to have their grandfather beaten upside his head and have his skull fractured because they don't agree.
Do you agree with me that when Scalise was shot, we all agreed, right? That Democrats did, that this was horrible. It was terrible. I didn't see Democrats going on social media, funny memes, making jokes about Scalise when he was fighting for his life. Yet we have Donald Trump Jr. with these funny memes and conspiracy theories about some sort of gay relationship he had. I mean, to me, it's just absolutely despicable, right? I didn't hear Democrats doing that when Scalise was shot.
Because one is we wouldn't. But it's more than despicable. It's disgusting, and they need to be held accountable because as long as it continues, it's only going to get worse. Look, after 9/11, when George Bush stood up on the rubble in New York and said, we're all Americans and we're defending our country against the enemy. I didn't agree with everything about what he stood for as a president, but that day he was the president.
Right.
And I'm tired of certain factions because they don't like policies that they somehow want America to fail, or they want our president to fail. I'm not in the business of failing. I know growing up here in Las Vegas, we've been through a lot of crap over the years. We came through 9/11. We came through the downturn of the housing crisis in 08. We've come out of this pandemic. But what I know about Las Vegas in particular is we're resilient people. We don't give up. We fight. We look out for one another. We care about our community. We will give someone the shirt off of our back if that is what they need. And I believe that when we focus on what we can actually still get done together for everybody, we can accomplish something very, very good. And that is where I try to put my energy and effort, because sadly, the other side wants to tear down. I'm for building up. Others want to tear down. I'm not for that.
Michelle, go ahead.
Okay, a couple of more questions if I can. So with gas prices, I guess I'm one of those conservatives who kind of agrees with you on this, that we should be going green. We need to do more things with green. Let's go with green energy. I do struggle with the fact, though, that why can't we produce more American oil? Because we're the cleanest oil. We're way cleaner than anything we could get from Iran or Argentina. So I don't actually know where you stand on this issue. Are you interested in doing both at the same time? Because my feeling is that the left is not interested in doing both. They only want to do one, the green energy. Is there a way to do both? And how do you feel about that?
I'm an all of the above energy advocate. I believe that we can do both together. all of when you say the left, we have a very diverse group of colleagues in our caucus.
Yeah.
So what one or two may think is not what all of us think.
Right.
And right now, there are major big oil companies, in fact, that are investing a lot in renewable energy development because they know that's the future, right? They're converting their refineries. Coal plants are being closed. A poor part of my bill that was passed that's included in the Inflation Reduction Act around the Green Act actually gives credits to convert from a coal mine like the one out in Reed Garner into a solar development for energy production. But there are ways to phase in those developments as well. You're not going to just have all clean energy tomorrow.
Right.
It takes time.
Right. So would you support more production of American oil? Would you support reopening the pipeline, the Keystone XL? Would you support any of that, or giving more opportunities to build a refinery? I don't think we've had a new refinery built here in the States since 1973.
Around the refineries, yes, it has to be environmentally sound. It needs to be done in a way particularly that doesn't impact communities of color, indigenous communities, Native American communities that are not always consulted, even though it's their land or their water that is impacted. I believe that is something that is open for debate. Keystone, honestly, had they done a better job of negotiating with the tribes, there were tribes who wanted that project done, but it's the way they went about it and putting the line directly through the tribal land. And it's sovereign land. You don't get to just drill a pipeline through this tribal government's land without their consultation. And unfortunately, the prior administration just wanted to push it through. Well, you can't, because now you're going to have it held up in lawsuits. So there are things that can be done, but it's the way you do them. And I believe that you can have multiple approaches for more energy production while we move to a more clean energy economy.
You talked about the college loan relief with Brian for a minute, but I wanted to ask, I just learned this statistic yesterday. 72% of Nevadans don't have a college degree. So I guess my question is twofold. Knowing that, do you think that it should fall on the shoulders of all Americans? And do you think in hindsight, Biden should not have done it as an executive order, and this should have been something that was addressed by Congress?
Well, I absolutely prefer when it's legislatively done, because there are things that we can do that the executive order can't. For example, I have a bill right now that would allow short-term training, 12 weeks, 16 weeks, to qualify for Pell Grant. Right now, under the Pell Grant program, only a 2-year and 4-year degree qualify for Pell Grant assistance. Why? Somebody decided only a 2-year and 4-year degree is suitable to get a Pell Grant. That to me is classist, because there are a lot of jobs that we could be training for that don't require a 2-year degree. But those individuals who are going to these 12-week, 16-week programs, they don't get any Pell Grant assistance. I have a bill to fix that. I want that bill to be brought up, because that would actually address college affordability for people through trade schools, through apprenticeship, through employer-based training. We also have an initiative around more apprenticeship. It's called the National Apprenticeship, where we would develop 1 million new apprentices, not only in building trades. We need apprentices in medicine. We need apprentices in areas like renewable energy and in these new areas of the new sectors that we're actually building. And we can take the model that has worked effectively with apprenticeship and adopt them into new sectors like manufacturing. So those are some of the legislative proposals that I and others are trying to advance. And yes, if Congress, with the Senate, that we can get the bills through. We pass these bills in the House, but they don't go anywhere in the Senate because they don't have the 60 vote threshold that they need to bring them to the floor. So unfortunately, too many of these bills get stuck.
Well, Congressman, I really appreciate you being here. Time goes by really fast. I'll be honest with you. I voted yesterday, and I voted for you, not because I think you're perfect. Nobody's perfect. But I know how passionate you are about the issues, and I think you're on the right side of history, whether it be gun control or healthcare. You want to help people that are struggling. I really believe you when you talk about these issues, and I know how passionate you are. And the other reason being, I believe your opponent is a buffoon, but I would never, call people names, but he's unfit for office. And anybody who's an election denier and says the things that he says on a regular basis, I would never vote for somebody like that. But before we go, I want to give you the opportunity. Please give out your website, how people can get involved with your campaign. I know we're only like a week away or less, but give out that information if people even want to learn more about you if they don't know already.
Well, thank you. And it's great to be on. Thank you for the conversation.
Sure.
We love to have people engage. We've got 6 days to win, and we need your help to do that. You can go to my website at stevenhorsford.com. That's stevenhorsford.com. You can also follow us on all of our social platforms at Steven Horsford, from Twitter to TikTok to Instagram and Facebook. But it's all about reaching people where they are. We need volunteers. If you want to come in and make a shift, canvas, talk to folks on the phone. We have got a big kickoff this Friday, the 4th, as part of First Fridays at our main campaign office on Main Street. So come check us out, come meet me, and talk about the issues and how we're moving Nevada forward.
Well, I can imagine, Congressman, you're not getting a lot of sleep these days. You've been at it, but I do appreciate you coming in and taking the time. It's a pleasure to finally meet you in person, and hopefully we can have you on again after you win, because I believe you will. Congressman Steven Horsford, thank you so much. Michelle, thank you for being here as well. That's a wrap, folks. We'll see you tomorrow, and have a great day.
Hey, everybody. Are you struggling to find a pizza place that reminds you of Brooklyn?